I'm 52 years old now, and when I look back, the warning signs were there long before everything went sideways. I just didn't want to see them. I had spent my whole life believing that if you worked hard, kept your word, and took care of your family, the world would eventually return the favor. That belief carried me through busted knuckles, missed holidays, and more 14-hour days than I can count. I built my business from nothing, started it out of a rented garage on the outskirts of Plano, Texas, back when my knees didn't creak and my hands healed faster. Custom equipment fabrication. Ugly work. Honest work. The kind that leaves grease under your nails no matter how hard you scrub. Over 20 years, that shop fed my family, paid for my house, and put my wife's relatives through rough patches they never thanked me for, but I didn't need thanks. That's what family does, I told myself. My wife, Linda, had a big family. Loud holidays, crowded kitchens, constant drama. Her mother, Marjorie, lived like the world owed her something it never delivered. Her son, Linda's boy from her first marriage, Evan, was the kind of man who always had a plan but never followed through. Smooth talker. Always between opportunities. Always one almost away from success. When Linda got sick, everything shifted. Cancer has a way of reorganizing priorities real fast. Suddenly I wasn't just running a business, I was managing medications, appointments, insurance calls, and fear I didn't know how to say out loud. I slept in a chair more nights than I slept in my own bed. And when Linda passed, something quiet but dangerous took root in the silence she left behind. That's when her family leaned in. At first, it looked like support. Meals dropped off. Calls checking in. Offers to handle things so I could grieve. Marjorie started coming by unannounced, reorganizing drawers that didn't need reorganizing. Evan showed up with concern in his eyes and questions that felt a little too specific. How's the business holding up? Still doing all right financially? Must be hard keeping track of all your meds now, huh? I chalked it up to care. Grief makes you generous with excuses. 6 months after Linda's funeral, I had a scare, blood pressure spiked, dizzy spell in the shop. Doctor put me on new medications and warned me not to miss doses. That was when Evan offered to help. "I'll manage your meds for you," he said, smiling like a son finally stepping up. "Set reminders, pick them up, make sure you're taking them right. You've got enough on your plate." I hesitated. Pride dies hard in men like me. But exhaustion wins eventually. "All right," I said. "Just for a bit." That was the moment I handed the wolf the keys and thanked him for watching the door. At first, nothing seemed wrong. Pills showed up on time. Bottles neatly labeled. Evan started dropping by every morning with coffee, sitting at the kitchen table, watching me swallow my meds like a nurse on a movie set. Head nod, satisfied. But something felt off. I couldn't put my finger on it, just a fog that settled into my bones. Some days I felt weaker after taking the pills, not stronger. My hands shook. My thoughts slowed. I'd lose entire hours staring at paperwork I'd reviewed 100 times before. I mentioned it once. "Totally normal," Evan said quickly. "Your boat is adjusting. Doctor said it could happen." I didn't remember the doctor saying that. But memory gets slippery when you're tired. Around that same time, Marjorie started asking questions about ownership. "Have you thought about succession? What happens to the shop if something happens to you?" Evan could really help run things, keep it in the family. I noticed she never said my family. Then came the paperwork. Power of attorney just in case. Suggested revisions to my will. Casual mentions of simplifying assets. I pushed back, gently but firmly. The air would change when I did, smiles tightening, patience thinning. That's when I started paying attention. One afternoon, I checked my pill bottle after Evan left. The dosage was wrong. Subtle, but wrong. Lower than prescribed on one med, higher on another. Enough to make me sluggish. Enough to make decisions harder. Enough to make accidents believable. I didn't confront him. Instead, I called my doctor directly. Asked questions I should have asked months earlier. What he told me made my stomach go cold. Those dosages could cause blackouts, falls, cardiac events, death, if taken long enough. That night, sitting alone in my quiet house, I opened my safe and pulled out my will. I read it slowly, line by line, with the kind of clarity fear brings. And right there, in black and white, I made a decision that would change everything. I crossed out names. I sealed the envelope. And I didn't tell a soul. Because sometimes the only way to survive betrayal is to let the traitors believe they're winning. A week after I sealed that updated will back in the safe, Evan's help stopped feeling like help and started feeling like supervision. Every morning around 7:15, he'd show up in that same slate gray hoodie, coffee in hand, acting like he was doing me a favor just by breathing near me. He'd set the cup down, open my kitchen cabinet, and pull out the pill organizer like he owned the place. "All right," he'd say. "Let's keep you on track." That phrase, "keep you on track," began to grind on me. I wasn't some confused old man wandering into traffic. I was still running a fabrication shop with 12 employees and contracts that could put food on a dozen tables. But in my own kitchen, the narrative was changing. Evan and Marjorie were painting me as fragile, forgetful, and one bad day away from losing everything. And Linda wasn't there anymore to slap sense into them. The fog got worse. At the shop, I started double-checking measurements ID normally eyeball without thinking. ID reread invoices 3 times and still feel uncertain. My foreman, Ray Gutierrez, pulled me aside one afternoon near the welding bays. "You alright, boss?" Ray asked, lowering his voice over the hiss of a torch. "You've been off." "Off." That was a gentle word for it. "I'm fine," I told him. "Just adjusting to some meds." Ray nodded like he accepted that, but his eyes didn't. Had been with me 10 years, he knew my rhythms. He knew when I was sharp, and he knew when something was messing with my head. That night, when I got home, Marjorie's car was already in the driveway. Linda's mom sat at my dining table with a little stack of papers and that look she always wore when she thought she was being reasonable. Like the world was a customer service desk and she was there for a refund. "Good," she said, as if I'd been late to my own house. "Sit." Evan was there too, leaning against the counter, arms folded. Smiling like a man watching a gate swing shut. "What's this?" I asked. Marjorie patted the papers. "Just some things we need to discuss. For your future." I didn't sit. I just stared at that stack like it might bite me. Evan cleared his throat. "It's not a big deal. It's just we've noticed you've been struggling. Forgetting stuff. Getting overwhelmed." I let out a quiet laugh, couldn't help it. It came out dry and ugly. "Struggling," I repeated. Marjorie leaned forward. "You are struggling. And it's okay. That's why family steps in." She said family like a weapon. The papers were printed forms, power of attorney templates, medical proxy stuff, and a business document that made my stomach tighten. It wasn't just about my health. It was about control. Evan tapped one page. This one would let me help with the shop accounts. Just signatory authority, really. So bills don't get missed if you're having a bad week. I looked at him. Really looked. His eyes were too bright. His smile too rehearsed. Like he'd practiced it in a mirror. "No," I said. The air shifted instantly. Like someone opened a freezer door. Marjorie's face hardened. Excuse me? I said no. Evan lifted his hands, playing calm. Why are you getting worked up? We're trying to help you. You're on blood pressure meds, you're grieving, you've been dizzy, and you're counting my pills like they're poker chips, I snapped before I could stop myself. That was the first time Evan's mask slipped. Just for a flash, his jaw clenched, his eyes narrowed, something sharp behind them. Then the smile crawled back into place. You're imagining things, he said softly. That's what those meds can do. Marjorie leaned back like she'd just won a point. See? This is exactly what I mean. He's confused. I stared at her. Get out of my house. Her eyebrows lifted. What did you say to me? You heard me, I said. My voice was steady now, quiet, dangerous. Both of you. Out. Evan's tone stayed syrupy. Let's not do this. You need rest, that's all. Why don't you take your night pills and lie down, and we'll talk when you're calmer. Night pills. My eyes flicked to the pill organizer on the counter. That's when something inside me clicked into place so hard it almost felt like relief. They weren't just trying to help. They were trying to steer me, slow me down, soften me up, make me pliable. And if I signed those papers, I'd be handing over the shop, the accounts, the whole life I built with my own blood and sweat. And if I didn't sign? Well, accidents happen to men who live alone, don't they? I walked to the counter, picked up the pill organizer, and opened it. Evan watched me like a hawk, almost holding his breath. I didn't take anything. Instead, I dumped the pills into my palm and studied them. Two looked different, same shape, but a slightly different shade. One had a marking I didn't recognize. I looked at Evan. What are these? He didn't blink. Your medication. No, I said. Not mine. Mine are blue and white. These are gray. Marjorie stood up. Oh, for God's sake, you're acting paranoid. Evan took a step closer, voice lowering like we were sharing a secret. You're tired. You're seeing things wrong. Come on, take them. You'll feel better. That was the moment I knew. Not suspected. Knew. Because a man who's innocent doesn't urge you to swallow something you're questioning. He offers to call the pharmacy. He offers to check the label. He doesn't push. I closed my fist around those pills. Get out, I said again. Evan's smile vanished completely this time. You don't know what you're doing. Oh, I think I do, I replied. Marjorie grabbed her purse, furious. Fine. Be stubborn. But don't come crying when you can't manage that shop anymore. Evan didn't move right away. He stared at me, eyes flat. Then he said, almost casually, you should really be careful living alone. It's easy for something to go wrong. And they walked out together. The door shut. Silence filled the house. I stood there in the kitchen with those pills in my fist, my heart pounding so hard it made my ears ring. Then I did the first smart thing I'd done in months. I called Ray. Ray, I said when he answered, I need you to come by after the shop closes. And don't tell anyone. Not a soul. There was a pause. You okay, boss? No, I said honestly. But I'm about to be. Ray showed up that night just after 9, grease still on his hands, jacket smelling like the shop. He took one look at my face and didn't ask questions right away. That's why I trusted him. Men who've worked real jobs know when to listen first. I poured 2 whiskeys and told him everything. About the pills. About Evan's help. About Marjorie's papers. About the way Evan told me to be careful living alone. Ray didn't interrupt. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and let out a slow breath. "My dad went out like that," he said quietly. I looked at him. "Second wife," he continued. "Started managing his meds after a stroke. He got weaker, slower. One night he fell down the stairs. Coroner called it an accident. 2 months later she sold the house and moved to Arizona with her nephew. That settled it. We didn't talk about if something bad was coming anymore. We talked about when. From that night on, I stopped taking anything Evan touched. I had my doctor issue new prescriptions directly to the pharmacy under a password. Picked them up myself. Locked them in the shop office safe. The fog lifted within days. Funny how clear your mind gets when someone stops poisoning you. I also made changes, quiet ones. I met with my lawyer, Tom Henley, a man who'd helped me set up the business 20 years earlier and never once asked for a favor. I told him everything. No emotion. Just facts. Tom listened, then said, "Good thing you came now." We updated everything. The will. Medical directives. Business succession. Evan and Marjorie were removed entirely, not crossed out, not minimized. Removed. My estate would go to a trust for my employees' families if anything happened to me. And then Tom did something unexpected. He slid a second document across the desk. "This stays sealed unless you die under suspicious circumstances." What is it? A statement. Names. Dates. Medication discrepancies. Witnesses. Instructions for an independent toxicology review. I signed it without hesitation. Back at home, I installed cameras. Nothing obvious. Just small ones, front door, hallway, kitchen. I didn't want to scare them off. I wanted them comfortable. Evan noticed the change in me almost immediately. "You seem better," he said one morning, watching me too closely. "Clearer." "Sleeping more," I replied. "Taking care of myself." He smiled, but his eyes searched my face like he was recalculating. Marjorie backed off for a while. That worried me more than her nagging ever did. Silence, when it comes from people like her, means planning. 2 weeks later, Evan called. "Hey," he said lightly. "I found a new cardiologist. Specialist. Says he can help optimize your meds. I'll drive you." "No," I said. "I'm good." There was a pause. "You don't trust me anymore," he said, not angry, just stating it. "I trust doctors," I replied. "And myself." Another pause. Longer this time. "Okay," he said. "Just trying to help." That phrase again. The next escalation came quietly. I found a new bottle of pills in my cabinet one evening, no label, no receipt. I didn't ask questions. I bagged it. Took photos. Logged the date and time. Then I waited. 3 nights later, I woke up at 2:17 a.m. to the sound of my front door unlocking. I didn't move. Didn't reach for my phone. Just lay there listening, heart steady, breath slow. Soft footsteps. Careful. Someone who knew the layout. The kitchen light clicked on. I watched through the bedroom camera feed on my phone as Evan stepped into view, gloves on his hands, holding a small syringe case. No hesitation. No confusion. Just intent. I let him take 2 steps toward the hallway before I spoke. "Put it down." He froze. The look on his face, shock first, then calculation, told me everything I needed to know. "You're awake," he said. "Always am," I replied. "Especially when someone breaks into my house to finish the job." He tried to talk his way out. Said I was mistaken. Said he was worried. Said Marjorie told him I'd been acting strange. I let him talk. Then I said, smile for the camera. That's when he ran. I didn't chase him. Didn't need to. The police arrived 10 minutes later, called by Ray, who'd been monitoring the camera feed from his place across town. I'd given him access for exactly this reason. Evan was arrested the next morning. Possession of controlled substances. Breaking and entering. Intent to harm. Marjorie screamed at me in the station parking lot, calling me ungrateful, cruel, heartless. I looked at her and said, "You taught him this." She stopped screaming. The business stayed open. The shop ran smoother than it had in years. My body recovered. My mind sharpened. And for the first time since Linda died, I slept without locking my bedroom door. Because the truth is this, the moment you stop pretending someone loves you, you stop being vulnerable to their knife. I didn't sleep the night Evan was arrested, not because I was afraid, but because my system didn't know what to do without the pressure anymore. My hands trembled as I made coffee. My chest felt hollow, like something had been scooped out and left open to air. Ray stayed with me until dawn, sitting at the kitchen table like a guard dog that didn't need to bare its teeth. Neither of us talked much. There was nothing left to explain. By morning, the story had already started moving without me. Marjorie called everyone. Linda's cousins. Old church friends. Distant relatives who hadn't spoken to me in years. The narrative spread fast and sloppy, that I'd lost my mind, that I'd set Evan up, that grief had turned me cruel. I let it happen. Men who survive don't waste energy defending themselves to people who already chose a side. The district attorney met with me 2 days later. She was calm, efficient, and very direct. "Your stepson didn't make a mistake," she said. "He made a plan. The evidence supports intent." She slid photos across the table, pills, syringes, falsified prescriptions. Toxicology reports from the discarded meds I'd saved. Surveillance stills of Evan inside my house at night. "You saved your own life," she added. That sentence landed heavier than I expected. Evan took a plea. He had to. The evidence was airtight, and Marjorie's frantic interference only made things worse. Conspiracy charges stuck to her like tar. Turns out pushing paperwork, pressuring signatures, and sourcing unprescribed medication leaves a trail when someone finally looks. I attended the hearing, not for closure, but for confirmation. Evan wouldn't look at me. Kept his eyes on the floor, jaw tight, like a man still angry the trap didn't work. Marjorie glared at me openly. If hate could have killed, I'd have been back in the ground. When it was over, I walked out of that courthouse lighter than I'd felt in years, not happy, not victorious. Just unburdened. Because the truth had finally caught up with them. The weeks that followed were quiet in a way that felt earned. I restructured the business fully, promoted Ray to operations manager, and stepped back just enough to breathe again. The shop didn't collapse like Marjorie always warned it would without family involvement. It thrived. Funny how a place runs better when no one's siphoning it dry. I sold the house. Not because it was haunted, but because it had done its job. It kept me alive long enough to see the threat clearly. I moved into a smaller place outside town, near open land and long sunsets. Somewhere no one could show up uninvited with a smile and a needle. One evening, months later, I found myself going through Linda's things. Not the painful stuff. The quiet stuff. Old notebooks. Photos. Receipts tucked into pages like bookmarks. In one notebook, I found a sentence written years before she got sick. "Watch Evan when money is involved. He doesn't see people, only opportunities." I sat there a long time holding that page. She knew. She'd seen it before I ever did. That realization hurt more than the betrayal itself, but it also brought peace. It meant I wasn't blind. I was just late. And late is still alive. I updated my will one final time, not out of fear, but clarity. Everything went where I wanted it to go. Clean. Simple. Uncontested. I locked the safe. And for the first time since Linda passed, I didn't feel like I was waiting for something bad to happen. Because hey race, the truth most people don't like admitting. Evil doesn't always come dressed like a villain. Sometimes it comes calling you dad and asking if you took your pills. It's been a year now. The shop hums without me hovering. Ray runs it like he was born to the place, steady and fair, the kind of man who fixes problems before they rot. I stop by a few times a week, drink bad coffee, check the books out of habit more than necessity. The men still call me boss, even though I tell them they don't have to anymore. Some titles stick whether you want them or not. The smaller house suits me. 1 floor. Big windows. A porch that catches the sunset just right. I keep a rocking chair out there, not because I'm old, but because it forces you to slow down. Makes you sit with your thoughts instead of outrunning them. Linda would have liked this place. I talk to her sometimes. Not in a sad way. Just updates. Like she's still away on a trip and I'm keeping her in the loop. I tell her I'm alright now. That I figured it out. That I wish I'd listened sooner, but I'm grateful I finally did. Evan took his sentence quietly. No letters. No apologies. Maybe pride. Maybe shame. Maybe he never really understood what he almost did. I don't spend time wondering anymore. Marjorie, last I heard, moved in with a cousin out of state. She tells anyone who'll listen that I destroyed her family. I suppose in her version of the world, that's true. The truth has a way of sounding cruel to people who live on manipulation. Eve learned something since all this ended, something men like me don't usually admit. Strength isn't just endurance. It's discernment. I spent most of my life powering through discomfort, assuming loyalty would eventually reveal itself if I just gave it time. But loyalty isn't proven by proximity or blood or shared last names. It's proven by what someone does when you're vulnerable, and whether they protect that vulnerability or exploit it. I used to think writing someone out of your will was an act of anger. Now I know better. It's an act of clarity. Every document I signed that day wasn't about punishment, it was about truth. About acknowledging who had earned a place in my life and who had only pretended. Some evenings, I pour a drink and sit on the porch as the sky turns that deep Texas orange. The air smells like dust and grass and possibility. And for the first time in a long while, my mind is quiet. No footsteps in the night. No pills I don't recognize. No smiles that feel rehearsed. Just peace. If there's one thing I'd tell any man listening to this story, it's this. Pay attention when someone rushes to take care of you. Watch what they want control over. And never confuse familiarity with safety. Because sometimes the greatest strength you'll ever show is choosing yourself, even when the people you walk away from share your last name.